We're not supposed to talk.
No, you're good to go. Jan can start the meeting.
As soon as I get the, pull up my agenda here. Since you typed up such a wonderful agenda, I gotta absolutely use it.
I may leave a little early. I've got a dinner engagement here in the neighborhood.
So we got, okay, Ruben's there, Jen's there.
George is there. Julia's apparently attending remotely.
Okay.
So,
All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. Max has determine a quorum. Is that a standard meeting requirement?
usually it is.
And that is to determine what constitutes a quorum, if we have a quorum.
Majority of the members.
What's that?
The majority of the members, so in this case,
But it's usually.
We absolutely have a quorum.
2/3, right?
usually we're just half plus one.
Half plus one. Yeah.
Not Robert's rules then. Usually they're.
I think we're only missing one member tonight, so.
Yeah, John Mark.
John, yeah. So we do have a quorum. And I guess there's adjustments to the agenda, if we need to make any adjustments.
Did we get on the agenda a discussion of the substation?
No, but we can, that will fall under
New business?
Sylvania updates.
Okay,
Citizens' comments, and there's no citizens visiting, so I guess we can move on to approval of the minutes. So did everybody get a chance to read Max's minutes from our last meeting?
There was one note from Bob. This is under town updates. The sentence will now read, Max said that Bill Moody went to a select board meeting and inquired about submitting a proposal to repurpose Friendship Street School.
Okay.
That's the only note I have.
All right. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
All right. And could I have a second? Sonia, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Ruben says aye.
Jen's got her hand up. All right, so minutes pass with that modification. Next is Chair's report. I'd like to give an update on the Waldenboro Food Pantry. So let me just pull up the numbers which just came in. So today was distribution day for us. And so the total, I should add, we actually did an extended distribution with the new van. So we actually went, and I'll make sure I get these names right, but we did deliveries to the Sproul Block, to Waldenboro Village, and to Coles Hill, which are three kind of all along Main Street there. And that went extremely well. So it reduced the amount of traffic that we had at the facility on Friendship, which kind of made that operation a little bit smoother.
how do people arrange that delivery, Jan? Do they call you?
We actually, so to get food pantry food, you have to sign up. And so we know all of the clients that live in those neighborhoods. So we just call them and say, hey, we're going to deliver. You don't need to come to us. We'll deliver the food to you.
Cool.
And the hope is that people will see that van and those deliveries, and other people in need will step up and say, hey, I could use that service as well. So. All right, so today we had 137 households, 4 new households. And the total number of people served was 369, which is, I'm pretty sure that's a record for the total number of people. So it was another very, very busy day. We ran out of food, actually. So a very busy day. All right. I don't think I really have anything else to report, so which takes us to John issued his update on COVID numbers. I don't know if I need to read those off or
You could do like the
That-
bullet point.
the bullet points.
If
Okay.
you want, it's not really necessary.
All right. Let me go there.
Like, I think just the initial thing of what the most recent numbers are and how that compares.
Yeah. So here's kind of the highlights. I'll just paraphrase here. He says, I can say that we saw a nice, this is John, not me. I can say that we saw a nice drop this week in COVID-19 cases in Lincoln County with 57 reported cases compared to 70 last week. Testing is around 450 per week, and the last 3 weeks have brought an increase in testing and positives. That's kind of the summary of that. Yeah. All right. Ruben, that takes us to the broadband update.
Well, I'm happy to announce that I still think broadband is a pretty good idea. That hasn't changed. I sent an email out this week to CCI, also known as Consolidated Communications, really just refreshing a question. That question being, hey, Consolidated, I know a lot of our neighbors have your Fidium product being installed. I'd like to understand how that worked because it's different in every town. And we have Max and I have a call coming up at 3 o'clock, I think on Thursday, where we can go over that data. I don't have a specific result tied to that. That's part of ongoing communication. That's the newest product. While we've talked to Consolidated before, this will be the first conversation we've had with them since they started doing those massive build outs in other parts of the state.
Ruben,
Yeah,
is Affinity fiber-based?
so it's called Fidium, Fidium,
Thank
and it
you.
is 100% fiber to the home across 3 speeds where they're deploying at 50 megabits full synchronous, 250 megabits synchronous, and a gigabit synchronous. If you Google them, they have different plans. They have their promo rates. Their 250 meg synchronous plan prices out at about what Spectrum's average plan does after their 2-year thing. Now, that being said, I don't want anyone to get excited. I don't want to overpromise anything. Our configuration is sort of average. They own most of the poles in our town, Consolidated. But they're not going to show up with a truck tomorrow. What we're doing is making sure we understand what it would take to get that particular service deployed, so we can compare that to what we know about LCI, about Spectrum, and with anyone else we might talk to.
Do they offer wireless telephone on the same?
So this is a pure data service. I'm sure they could, but they deliver a broadband connection upon which you could put any streaming service you have. You could do Vonage or something like that, or you could do any of these MVNO carriers. An MVNO is just a cellular carrier that resells Spectrum. A good example is a company called Ting. They charge like $20 a month, and that will also work over Wi-Fi. This is pure data. This is a broadband connection. Nothing else is tied to it.
So Ruben, it's kind of a tangential question, but I've noticed ads on TV lately for like hotspot internet over the telephone,
Yep.
over telephone service. So which, I mean, I don't know what the speeds are for that kind of a service, but if you could eliminate cables, it seems like that might be an interesting option, but I'm not, can you talk
It's
about that a little
interesting.
bit?
It's interesting, but it's misleading. So I'm going to give you the rule that I use this is how I upset every cellular carrier on the planet. Wire is faster than air.
Yeah.
Cellular should always be a plan B or secondary benefit of a solid fiber network. truly fast 4G, 5G, whatever current state-of-the-art wireless is, a properly deployed network is always going to be fiber dense. You want to have as many homes as possible connected with a wire, and then the remainder can have access to that shared wireless bandwidth. What the goal really should be is to get all the physical buildings connected, and then you want that wireless for people that are driving through, for people that are walking, for your emergency services and things like that. One is not an alternative to the other. Those two things are components of a healthy broadband network that can let you deliver all the services and benefits that you would want in a healthy economy.
Sonia has her hand up.
Yeah, well, I was asking, how does this broadband get deployed, or who's paying for it?
This is why we're having that question, because there are multiple models. So when I talk about Fidium's deployment, we'll focus on Rockland specifically. That was a private investment, as far as I understand. What Fidium or what Consolidated is doing is tying fiber on top of their old copper phone lines, because they're at a point where it is a better deal for everyone, including them, to run that cable. So you have models where they do that on their own and the subscribers pay it back. You have models where towns will get a bond to put that fiber up. You'll have models where you get a grant to put that media up. There's a lot of ways to get there. I can't give you a more detailed or useful answer until Max and I have that next conversation. This is just a piece of the whole thing. We need to find out what it would take to get them to build their network. We need to find out what the survey that we send out says in town. And with those things together, we can put together potential costs and interests. And then we look at applying for a grant or suggesting a bond get on the ballot or something like that. Someone does have to pay for it. These things are expensive. But this project is like rural telephony in the early 1900s. Whatever we get done here is what we're going to get done for the next century. And I have a brand new thing I want to run by you guys. And Bob and Max, I think you've seen it because I put it in the email, but I have a statistic for you. Something like 50% of the 10-year-olds in America are expected to live to 104. When you get to that stage in life, or even 20 years previous to that, you have a lot of issues that come up that are social, that are centered around loss of access to the community, loss of social life. And when it comes to things like that, and things like that seem simple, like loneliness, those really affect your health. So if we can get this built out, we can give these people that are 10 years old now, and they're 104, we can give them something to make their life better and potentially longer, because they'll have access to healthcare and telemedicine and education, and things like entertainment and games will be in there too, but they're really minor. So when you think about those costs, keep that in mind. This isn't because I want, Jeff at the end of the road to watch Netflix. I want someone to be able to get the new standard in the form of care, the new standard in, this is the new house call that doctors are doing again now. But we need these stable wired networks in place to deliver this stuff over the next century.
So then to answer on the investments, right now, Ruben and I, we're doing it at sort of just on our own. Ruben as a volunteer and myself as just a consultant right now. So when actual expenses do come up, we do always report these to the EDC. And when that time will come of actually spending, we're probably going to need the select board to authorize that. And that's going to be based on a recommendation that's made here at the EDC. So,
okay, because what I'm looking at is I don't see people right now having a lot of needing something like that. It's on average, they just have cable or their phone or just regular internet. They aren't needing gigabytes of data. That's more like an industrial level, isn't it?
Well, so there's two, so if I may.
I go ahead.
So there's two points to that are critical. One is, we're an economic development committee. If you want to attract business to Waldenboro, you have to be able to provide that kind of internet speed. Companies won't come here if we can't provide it. So it's part of what we're trying to.
That's what but I'll listen in, because I'm thinking, because I'm driving around the neighborhoods trying to know Waldenboro and seeing what's here, because I figure you look at what you have and what you have to work with type stuff. And then it's, but go ahead.
But, and you don't know, I mean, it could be an individual like Ruben working out of his home needs that speed to do his job. I'm retired now, but when I was working, I needed that speed to be able to do my job. So it's home office environments, it's attracting new business to Waldenboro. So we can't be left behind. We can't be a dial-up community in a fiber world. Won't work.
I don't think anybody has dial. Well, I don't. I have the stream. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
Right.
No, okay, I'm just, because, all right, go ahead. Yeah. I was just looking at the population and overall things.
And yeah, well, and again, that's why we now come, oh geez. I see the two hands. I'll get to that in a second, but that's why we have the survey that we need to go through to just see what interest there is in the town, because it might be people are satisfied with what we have now versus some people saying, well, let's get in while the money's still coming in. But we should probably get to the two hands. So
Yeah.
Jen,
Hi, guys. So I don't know you, Sonia, but I'll give you two examples. One's me personally. I've been working remotely for 20 years here and struggled mightily to actually do my work. Even though I'm on a better plan with Spectrum at this moment, I still have trouble with buffering and dropped internet, even paying for that higher level of service. And that allows me, having this job, I could never make locally what I can make online, working online, remotely.
Right.
That's one thing. The other thing is most businesses, and if you survey the small businesses in town, they absolutely need good, stable internet connectivity. They all use it very well. I would say, yeah, just about everybody. Realtors, all of our tourist businesses, George's business, Bob's old business. I mean, it was all based on good, solid internet connection. If the best you could buy, the best you could buy. The other thing is that businesses nowadays who want to come to any location, they need it. They need it to do the work that they do. And so in order to get good jobs to come to Waldenboro, because when I moved to Waldenboro 20 years ago, there was more good, larger businesses with good paying jobs who've left in the meantime. Those businesses were big taxpayers in town. They, for example, Sylvania was the largest customer for the sewer and water. So once they left and we no longer had the benefit of their property taxes, our property taxes went up. And so did everybody who's on the sewer and water, for example, because the costs don't go down when somebody leaves. That cost is then distributed over the current customers. There's many and varied reasons why we want to attract a business or more than one, maybe a few that have good jobs, good paying jobs for, and also to keep our young people here. Another goal that people would like, not everybody to leave Maine when they get out of high school or college, but they think they have a future here, a way to raise their families and pay for their expenses. So that's all I'm saying about that.
Julie?
As far as who uses it, I just wanted to bring up too, that during the last 2 years, a lot of the time, our high school and our other schools were remote learners. So there was an increased need for connectivity for the kids here remotely. And also one of the biggest concerns we had trying to get Chapel Road wired was a nurse who was doing a future nurse who was doing her college education online. So that's just another user. I just wanted to point that out.
Good point.
And I think Ruben.
Ruben?
So I'm gonna do something unusual and not give the long speech I had in my head. Offline, Sonia, when you say things like on average, people don't need certain types of connectivity, I'm very interested in your data. I would love to go over the numbers and how you arrived at that conclusion. And I can share with you, I've got numbers on everything that you do online, including this meeting that is using about half a gig every half hour. And that's up and down, for a full video user. Those are the things we need to keep in mind. And I'm going to spare the rest of my speech on the other things, but if we're going to generalize like that, it's very important that we compare our numbers and know how we're arriving at that, because it's easy to say, but I think you'll find it's harder to prove.
So just before going any further.
George, you have something to say?
Okay.
Well, I was just going to give a very short example. My two sons who work out of state and require internet bought the house next door, invested a fair bit to bring it up to a nice house. People are coming in, Airbnb sometimes, but the point is that there's no way they would have invested in that had they not been able to do their jobs from here.
Ruben, is your hand still up, or is that just left up?
That's because I'm dumb and didn't click the button. I'm good. I'm done talking for the next 10 seconds at least.
Okay. So I think we got to that point quite a bit. So Ruben, unless you had any updates, other updates, I was hoping to just start talking about the survey.
Yes.
Oh, please go ahead.
Sorry, it needed just to detract.
No.
No, that's good.
It's fine. I think it's always good to have these types of discussions, and I think it is important that we do sort of note in these public meetings, just there is a process to the whole thing. Like, just because we're looking at it doesn't mean we're doing it tomorrow. And we're looking at it because there are some who do believe there is a big economic need to doing this right now. And some other towns see it that way. Some other towns have different ways of getting to that end goal. So for us, I think it's a matter of seeing what our end goal is when it comes to broadband. So on that note, let's talk on the survey. So I did make the update that was, how much do you pay for internet service per month?
And is it bundled?
Yes. So question 5 asks how much you pay for your internet service per month. And it does $50 increments, 0 to 49, for people who aren't paying anything for it. Then it goes all the way up to $200 or more, people who are paying top dollar, pretty much.
Yep.
And then right underneath that, is your internet service bundled with other services, TV, phone, etc.? Yes, it's bundled with blank. No, it's not bundled. And everything else has just been more amending the questions. Question 4, I think it's just now boiled down to the broad categories that people do for broadband use, rather than just saying what's your top use. I'm just saying what you use it for, pretty much. Some people are just going to say communication. Some are probably going to say telehealth. I doubt everyone's going to say work. It could also just be changed to saying what is the most common use, like the top common use if we want to, but I don't know if we're just muddling it or not thinking too much on this at this point. Other than that, I believe that it's pretty much the same one we've had last time. Would you favor the town of Waldenboro pursuing grants to upgrade the town's internet to match the state of Maine's definition of broadband? And it gets into the definition of that. And then a separate question for favoring the town to financially using a bond to upgrade the town's internet to match the state of Maine's definition of broadband. And that one has a yes if it is providing a match to a grant, and then just a no.
Yep.
I'm a little confused. In number 8, 9, we talk about the town's internet.
Yes.
That seems to imply to me that the town owns internet.
So broadband in Waldenboro.
And well, we need to be very specific about what we're asking people to respond to here. That's all.
So perhaps it should say, would you favor the town of Waldenboro pursuing grants to upgrade the broadband in Waldenboro to match. Would that
But
be
we
better?
don't have the power to upgrade the broadband at Waldenboro. We don't own it. We can't do anything with it. This implies to me, it's implied in both of these questions, that what you're really trying to determine is whether or not the town ought to have its own municipal network that serves everybody in town who lives on a public road.
So do you have a recommendation for rewording it?
Well, I want to know where we're going with this first. I don't want to reword it if that's not the intent of the survey. Are we trying to find out if people are in favor of a municipally owned service that serves every public road in town?
That wasn't the intent as I understood it.
Ruben, I lost you. Did you say it was or was not?
Was not.
What would you think it was, Ruben?
So first off, it's not that I think that we would discount the municipal question entirely. I think that's a separate step. So what I thought we were doing was we want to work with existing providers or private companies that could be providers and see what the interest is in upgrading service that already exists or in bringing in new service. Should that fail, or should we start a whole separate plan? The question of a municipal network would be a whole separate effort that this process could inform. If we came to a situation where suddenly nobody was going to have internet, maybe we'd pursue that. So we would be looking at getting a grant or doing a bond to, I guess, hire whatever ISP to either build a new or improve an existing network to meet the state's minimum speeds. I'm not sure how to say that with fewer words. The way I put it isn't very artful, but I hope it's clear on what I want to do.
Who
So-
would own it?
Well, right now, so the municipal thing aside, because I'm not talking about that, we are talking about, hey, Spectrum, how much to expand your network to the other roads and meet state minimums? Hey, LCI, how much money to expand your network and meet state minimums? Hey, Consolidated, how much money would it take to build your network in our town and meet these minimum broadband numbers? And we are then looking for a grant or a bond to fund that.
Well, George just had to leave.
Okay,
Just wanted to let everyone know for who can't watch it from home.
okay.
Yeah, Sonia?
Well, I don't know, maybe with that implying that the town, maybe just have the question, do you think the internet service needs improvement in our area? Make it simple like that? Are you having difficulties with the internet? What do you think? Without it implying that the town would provide it?
Well, I don't want to, leaving it so broad as, are you satisfied with, or do you have any issues with the internet?
It gets too many answers.
It's gonna probably have people say, oh yeah, I have the best internet in town and I still get a 1 second buffer for this 2-hour 4K movie that I downloaded. I mean,
I think we're really good right up to 8 and 9, I would say.
that's, again, I'm thinking, would you favor the town of Waldenboro
Would you favor the town of Walden?
pursuing grants to
Can I
work with a
suggest,
private
could
developer?
I suggest something?
Sure.
Would you favor the town of Waldoboro pursuing grants to work with existing internet service providers
Mhm.
to upgrade the town's internet to match the state of Maine's definition, et cetera? Because I think that's what Ruben is saying.
Right.
But why would the town of Waldoboro get a grant for LCI or whoever to
Good question.
upgrade their system?
People are doing that all over the state.
Right.
That's the game. When you talk about like cable internet, that maxes out at 940 by 40.
Yeah, but what I
Money-
see, but Ruben, what I see is that the providers are getting the grants to do that work. Is that
Well,
not true?
ultimately, that's where the money goes. But if we want it done in Waldoboro, the town applies for the grants. We do our RFP, we get a price tag, we apply for the grant, and that grant goes to whoever we've chosen
all
to
right.
work.
And just
All right.
very quickly, I do see Jen's hand up, but just very quickly to the point I want to get on with how broad it is and whether we have to define the town owns it or it's gonna be privately owned. We just need to see if people want this upgrade in the first place. Because if everyone says, yeah, let's do an upgrade, then we'll do an RFP, and it might be that we're gonna have Axiom or who is it, Pioneer Broadband. They might say, oh, we can do it for this. And then LCI might say, oh, we can do a different type of setup, but for this. And
Well, then why don't you phrase it that way? Simply say, would you prefer to have better internet service in Waldenboro? Yes or no?
who's gonna say no to do want something that's better?
Do you want more?
You set a standard, 100 up and 100 down.
I mean, I've got emails that people have literally said, we don't need anything better, and they don't want it.
I'm interested. So before I get sidetracked even further,
But I think the other part of this is that it is possible that Waldenboro, the end game could be that we own the internet.
it might. Jen has her hand up.
Yeah, Jen, go ahead.
I just wanted to make it clear so that the audience knows is that we haven't set a goal to own the internet, and we don't own anything. We've been working with providers as partners to get grants to bring the internet to roads in Waldenboro that didn't have it, where people said they wanted it. So this, we have to make sure that people understand and know where we've been over these last years, and that we're moving forward because we're moving forward as part of the country, not just the part of Maine, not just part of New England, but the whole country is moving forward with this initiative. So it's not that we're not have a main goal to own it.
Is that a true statement?
That's not as far as I'm concerned.
I don't think that's a true statement.
I think
Jen.
it's proven, Jen, where you have public municipally owned internet, the prices are so much lower than they are if they're owned by a private enterprise.
Okay, yeah.
Incredibly lower.
Right, but we didn't say that. We're not,
Right.
that-
No, we're not. We're not saying it.
Right. So
We're not
this is-
anti that either. It's a very big conversation, which is why that piece would need to be separate.
Right. We have to really establish that this is the first step here. We're not telling anyone, as Jen said, we're not telling anyone that we're gonna own it. That might be an end goal for some people. It might not be the end goal for some others. Right now, we just need to ask. If we want to go with that broad of a question, we could ask.
I guess my concern would be that if the town was hugely in favor of the town of Waldoboro owning its own internet infrastructure, and we don't put that in the questionnaire, that we might miss that chance,
I feel that type of question should be reserved for its own type of,
standalone.
similar to what we did in 2020 with having all those informal questions on
Yep.
election day.
Yep.
That I feel is something that type of question would be for.
And we don't have enough information to even ask that kind of question, because you have to give people a context, something
Right.
to base an answer on, and that's not here. Plus, Julie has a question in the chat.
Yep, I worry I might have caused that. Hi, Julie.
Tried the chat, so then I figured I'd raise my hand. Are you trying to gauge what people are willing to pay for?
Mm,
Is that what this question is trying to get at?
That's
No.
a potential resulting question.
Okay.
We're sneakily not addressing that part of the question.
Which one?
Whether
Town should own it or
the
not?
town should own it or not, yeah.
Well, and I go back to the reason
Well,
why.
it's not even the town. Oh,
Sorry, Julie, go ahead.
because I think a good portion of that would be answered in essentially what you're asking people to do. No matter if we do it within the provider or it's municipally owned, you're asking the taxpayers to invest tax dollars into this. What's their level of paying for? Then you're going to ask them also, after they've invested in that, to give a monthly payment to someone, whoever it is. So I just didn't know if you were trying to figure out where their pain threshold is for the initial investment.
Oh,
I agree with Julie, that's part of it, but I think it's more complicated. I mean, some schemes have those who pay for the service the debt. So it's not a tax issue. It's a subscription issue. And if you
It
don't get a
becomes
large
tax
number
issue.
of people in Waldenboro willing to subscribe to service the debt, it's not going to go anywhere.
But you are making it a tax issue if we're going to go through grant funds and we have to match it.
Yes, that's right.
well, and then there's the point that Jen brought up, and that's part of what Jen brought up earlier. It's kind of the reason why I have the bond as a separate question, is that
Okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't see that. I'm sorry.
what? No, oh no, I was going to get to the point of like, let's say we have 100 people saying they're going to subscribe to it, and that's just enough. What happens if we have a Sylvania type situation where a good chunk of those people move and then we've lost those subscribers? It's then going to be a hope, an assumption that more people will come in to fill that gap. Don't know if that makes sense. It made sense in my head.
Well, unfortunately, we have to play the cards we're dealt. I mean, we're not going to change the real world. We're not going to
No.
suddenly have Spectrum and LCI and all these service providers disappear and gracefully walk out because we want to do it ourselves. They're making money. They're going to stick
Right.
around. So,
Yeah.
you know, you
So-
got to,
Well, everybody's going to get a little slip in their mail with discount rates. Undercutting whatever it is we come up with.
yeah.
So let's get back to the survey so that we can have something prepared, so we can have this go out to residents hopefully soon.
So Max, also, some of the data that we need in order to make any future decisions will come in with RFPs.
Mhm.
Supposedly that we may be issuing in our RFP, right? The proposals will bring in more data, hopefully.
Right.
So that we have a more knowledge.
Right.
Let me ask,
Hold on, just
Go ahead.
one very quick thing. Julie, is your hand up because you have a question? Julie?
My hand's up because I'm trying to figure out how to get it back down again. I'm sorry.
No worries, just wanted to be sure.
should, for the purpose of this survey, do we need questions 8 and 9? I wonder if that complicates the data that you're actually trying to get. In terms of, are we under service, essentially?
I don't have a copy of that.
Oh. And,
Thank you.
I thought that,
While we're talking, you lost track of it.
I thought this was a precursor to applying for a planning grant.
part of it, yes.
Do you mean there's more than that to it?
I'd like to do the planning grant. I'd like to do an RFP. And that's what I want to use this survey for,
But you talk about an RFP for what?
with the planning grant. I guess now I'm confused. Like, I don't want to do 50 surveys. That's part of it. I want to do one survey that just asks residents, are you interested in this? Then
Well, okay, hang on.
But yeah,
What is
this?
an improved broadband capability that's in Waldenboro. And I say the town's internet, or I say the broadband in Waldenboro, because we don't own it. I don't know who in town would assume that we own any of this internet. So I say, are you interested in applying for grants or doing a bond so that we can upgrade the broadband in Waldenboro? If people say yes, then I want to put out an RFP to see if there's businesses who will see this results and say, oh, we can make this work. And then work with that business and get the planning grant done. Because they may say, we're willing to do it, but we need to see that there's more than just this one survey, and then the planning grant.
It's different to say internet in Waldenboro as opposed to saying Waldenboro's internet.
And I'm fine making that change. Hold on, Ruben made a long. I'm
So
sorry, Ruben, do you
upgrade-
mind reading the chat now that I'm done with my rant?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And you covered some of it. So I don't, everyone needs to be clear. I'm not dismissing any statement made here because these are great questions. I think we got ahead of ourselves on a couple issues. We're getting stuck on the bond issue. There's no guarantee of a bond being required or being part of this. That's a potential down the road. We haven't gotten there yet. We need to gather the survey via this data. After we have the survey, we could then look at an RFP to get a price tag. And once we have that price tag, we find out how we figure out, is there interest to pay for this? And then how do we pay for it? And after all of that, or during that very last phase, that's when these other questions should come back up and be answered. Who provides the network, who owns it, who builds it. But I think getting stuck on any of the bond stuff is just going to get in our way from this basic survey.
Well, and you have to go back to the town for a vote anyways, don't you?
When we have to financially do it.
Yeah. So,
But how many chances do you think we'll get at that?
right, but if you reword 8 to say, basically to the money for a study,
Mhm.
kind of what you're talking about, to determine what options are available.
Okay.
Asking if they'll approve a bond is irrelevant, isn't it?
So okay.
Because you have to go to
So,
the town for that anyway,
so
for a vote.
if I'm hearing everyone right, and hopefully this is right, so 9 will remove, just get rid of 9, no talk of a bond.
Yeah.
And then 8 will be reworded for the town of Waldenboro to pursue a planning grant with the end goal of improving broadband in Waldenboro.
There you go.
Perfect.
To meet
That's
that
perfect.
state standard with all that other.
Ruben, are you okay with that?
I think that's a beautiful answer, and it just makes me happy we have all these different brains in the room. That's great.
So I saw it saying.
Yeah, no, what you suggested is great, but I had one thing's not on here. It's like, how many people do we know if they know what broadband is? I didn't until we started talking about it. I think we should ask
A
them, do you know
definition?
what, yeah, do you know what broadband is? Yeah.
So, definition of broadband.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
That's a really good idea.
And I think Jen's hand is up. Is
Nope.
it?
That was a thumbs up. I was,
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
So
You could put that in as question 9 that you took in. Because it seems to flow with the questions.
8. Pursue planning grant.
I would say that in the first sentence, Max. The information gathered in this survey will help guide the Economic Development Committee to determine whether it should pursue a planning grant to improve broadband in Waldenboro.
All right, now hold on. Now we're starting to get into another thing. So are you saying that 8 should not even be a question, but instead a statement in the beginning?
That's one way of doing it. Yeah. Makes it easier. It's one less question to answer. It's on tape, so I can't.
It would be interesting if all the answers were that there's a real need for improvement. And then the question where you say, can we get a grant, is no. It's a good point. I mean, you might be setting yourself up.
People don't say, no, don't get a grant. They love grants.
That was
We
about-
do.
Yeah. When we were initially doing the TIF, people were saying, no, I don't want the TIF. I want you to get grant money.
Yeah.
All right, well, what's going to match that grant money?
Right.
Another grant.
Right.
What's going to match that grant?
Right.
Nothing but grants.
Okay.
All right.
Your
So
basic question is number 7. That's really what you want to know.
Yep.
And if the answer no to that, then I would think it's clear we ought to figure out how to plan for making improvements.
right. Well, so I don't have the survey in front of me anymore, but just no, it's fine. It's fine. But the main changes I'm seeing is, one, include the definition of broadband at the top, just a little disclaimer. Two, remove question number 9. And 3, rewording question 8 to pursue, so that it's saying that it's asking residents if they approve us pursuing a planning grant to improve broadband in Waldenboro.
Yes,
Any other changes?
I think that's fine.
So if that's the case, is there any more approval that's needed, or is it fine if I just get it and then the select?
Should
board-
we take a vote on it?
I would suggest that you come up with a final version, send it out to the members of the committee, ask them for feedback,
If there's none,
and
then
if there's none, go with it.
Go with it.
And
Yeah,
if there's an obvious suggestion that is brilliant or whatever, then put it in there and go with it, and then send it out again to make sure everybody's okay.
so then,
So what we're gonna do is approval via email. So everybody's okay with that?
I think it would, okay. It might be, yeah, never mind. I'm just,
I mean, if you get out tomorrow, say.
Send it.
yeah, you want me to send it on my one day?
Just-
out. Hi, Julie.
You don't want to discuss it as a group because that constitutes a meeting.
Yeah, what I usually do with.
You know how to send it out properly.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send it to everyone as like a BCC or something.
Yep.
Just say, respond to it by this time. If you don't respond to it, then I'm taking that
It's
as a yes.
affirmative. Yes.
And we're all responding to you.
Yes.
Yes.
Just
Individually,
you.
Just me.
Okay, that's good.
All right. All right then.
Good job, you guys. Thank you.
Any other items on the survey? All right.
All right. We got through it. We got through it.
All the town updates.
Yeah, that was the survey was the easy one.
That was supposed to be quick. Okay.
All right, so town updates. Max and Julie.
So planning board, very quickly. There is a pre-application for Muscungus Bay. They're looking to do a second storage unit. They already have their one boat facility and there's a lot of business, so they want to get a second one while there's the iron's hot. And then the second is for a retail store, for a glassware shop at 1584 Atlantic Highway, just in front of the town office here. Meeting's going to be on May 12th, and just gonna have to see how that goes. So that's,
Is glassware a euphemism for something else?
it's the materials used to smoke marijuana, which we have a medical marijuana licensing ordinance that has a retroactive date to make that prohibited if it passes in June. And I'm going to get into that in a bit. So it's a very interesting planning board meeting I'm expecting in May. We also did a quick site visit for 3425 Atlantic Highway, which is Seacott Trucking. That went well. I think there's a good direction from the planning board for where to go next. And everyone, DOT, the applicant, the planning board, they all seem on the same page. So very optimistic about how that's going to go. I would hope they're going to be ready in the middle of summer. So town warrant articles for June 14th. You can go online to the Town of Waldenboro website, and Julie showed me this. That was very interesting. There's the little pop-up on the bottom right corner that talks about all the town meeting warrant articles. You know, the usual budget items and the ones that are not the typical ones. Julie, do you want to go through each of the items? I didn't think you were going to be at the meeting, so I didn't know if you were going to actually be here. Did you want to quickly go through the ordinances, or do you want me to just quickly say what they are and the brief summary?
It's
Julie? Okay.
totally up to you. I don't have the warrant in front of me because I actually went home. But if you give me the ordinance, I can chat about it.
Well,
Whichever you want to do.
I will.
Why don't you read it? And then if there's questions, I can address them.
Yes, I will quickly run through these. So the main ones that you'll find on there's Article 33, and this is adopting an ordinance titled Disorderly Property Ordinance. And this is directed at properties that are harboring occupants who disturb the peace and tranquility of their neighbors. It's not a property maintenance ordinance. Some people have already asked that. This is a matter of noise violations and nuisance, or you can clarify it. It's more noise or noise issues where the police are called frequently to a spot.
It's not even noise.
Not even noise.
It's so much.
Human
It's not even
behavior.
so much noise. It's behavior.
Yeah.
It's repeated. So it would be properties that the police frequent often if there's fighting, disorderly persons, drug offenses. So if you have a property that the police, EMS, fire are continually going to, or there's continual neighbor complaints, the chief of police, there's a whole process laid out in the ordinance where we can address those properties. And especially for, this was brought to our attention by our community navigator as a way to even handle some. So if you have a small area that has a lot of rentals in it and you have one rental unit where there's continued disorderly events, this puts some onus on the landlord to make changes, including the tenants inside. So it really is trying to curb some of what we would consider nuisance properties. Again, not property maintenance issues, but conduct issues.
And Julie, are these events that don't rise up to criminal behavior?
Some of them actually would rise up to criminal behavior, but it's repeated criminal behavior. Because what's happening is there's not always consequence for that criminal behavior. So that may stop it that night. And by the next morning, that individual that was taken into custody. So repeated offenses, and there's a certain number of offenses in the ordinance, how many, how often it happens. I can give you an example of, I won't disclose the location, but there are, in a week's time, we could see a police officer responding for the same issue that happened 2 nights before, 3 times in 1 week to the same residents.
That is the first item.
Okay.
Then there is Article 34, shall the town vote to adopt an ordinance titled Town of Waldenboro Medical Marijuana Licensing Ordinance. I just mentioned this very briefly during the planning board. The state does allow us to regulate medical marijuana. We have not done so in the entire time that it has been allowed use. The state says that until we adopt an ordinance that would specifically say it, the only type of medical marijuana business allowed in town is for a registered caregiver. And that's been fine. Waldenboro's been fine with the opt-out status for a while. And we're allowed to regulate registered caregivers. The reason that this is being made by myself and Stan Waltz is because there is no formal process to do this. Someone will call us and say, we want to do this. And I say, fine. And they're really not held to any fees or standards, which is unfortunate. So that's the first goal. Stan has a process. And 2, we'll actually now have local standards. We don't just default to whatever the state says, which changes almost frequently.
Yep.
And then the 3rd is to broaden what a storefront is considered. Because right now, what we are including in this that's unique for us is a registered caregiver just can't be operating on the same premises as a retail store in general. So the reason is because a registered caregiver, the intent behind that was supposed to be they'll have their quiet little home office, they'll meet their patients there, but they're not supposed to be like having big billboards and signs saying, come get the marijuana over here. That's where the storefronts at. what some are doing is they'll set up their office, and then they'll set up a separate business right next door or on the same lot that can do all the advertisements, and then just say, oh, if you're interested, then why don't you
Over here,
go
yeah.
to the next building. And so Stan and I are trying to address that in the loophole.
And any existing businesses would be grandfathered somehow?
Yes, the only two exemptions are the ones that were approved back in like 2018 when the last big change was made, and that's Highbrow and Finest Kind, I think they're at the top of the hill.
Yep.
And this has a retroactive date of April 12th, which when the select board approved the ordinance. And that is because we didn't want someone to read the ordinance, say, oh, wait, I can do that, and then try and do something at last second, like setting up shop in the shoreland zone or anything like that. Any questions on that ordinance? Okay. The shellfish management ordinance to include penalties for harvesting shellfish without a license and failure to stop for an inspection by a municipal shellfish conservation warden. Julie, do you have any thoughts on this one?
It's specifically done because we've noticed with the price of clams going up, there's more people who are not licensed. And we want licensed shellfish harvesters, one, because it's a sustainability issue, and two, it's a quality issue. And if they're not licensed and coming in, they're not aware of all the closures, they're not aware of all the rules, and it's again, sustainability issue. And currently, we do have people who come in, they're want to be licensed, and this just discourages them if they really ever want to become licensed in Waldenboro. They'd have to wait 3 years to be able to be eligible for a license. And currently, if our warden were to stop someone who was digging illegally, this presents them or creates a penalty if they dump their clams back in or if they run, because we have a lot of times they run. You can't.
Julie, you're breaking up a bit.
So
Yeah,
this
we're
gives a
losing you.
penalty
She's at home,
to
right?
stop if they don't stop. Supported by the Shellfish Committee.
All right, it's supported by the Shellfish Committee, and from what I got from it, it was some people have just dumped or run, and this is to help punish them. You did break up a bit there, but I think we still got at least the gist of
gist,
it.
yeah. Makes sense.
Is there any questions from the committee on this?
Other than the visual of someone trying to run across clam flats. Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Justin probably has a good story or two. Next is Article 47. It's another 80 grade question. Shall the town approve the creation of up to 36 units of affordable senior housing on the site of the former 80 Gray School and authorize the select board to convey the 80 Gray School property, and it gives the map and lot number, to Volunteers America for $1 and on such other terms and conditions that the select board deems to be in the best interest of the town, including the probable demolition of the school building. You do have to ask this question again because last year we had a very similar question. It was under the assumption that the building was going to be rehabilitated. And unfortunately, we did our structural engineering. We checked with the historic tax credits. Both didn't really come in a favorable results. And so we were told, can we demolish the building and then do the units? And that's something we want to ask the residents of town. Because we know some people did vote because it was a rehabilitation project. And this is to sort of give Volunteers America the way of pursuing all their funding and opportunities with the idea of the school being demolished. But still just the lot with the school, not, am I right, Julie? Not Philbrook Ball Field, not the 2 acres right next to it. If this is just 80 Gray.
Yes.
Down to the tennis courts?
We still keep the tennis courts in this.
We still keep the tennis courts. Correct.
So it's like the gray tarmac that surrounds the building. That's it.
Pretty much.
Can you hear me better now, Max?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you.
It was all the cat's fault.
Cats. I mean, I don't really have anything else to add for 80 Gray.
Just a quick question, Julie, have we considered tearing the building down, the school down and selling the property as a, as a windfall for the town?
That was considered during some AD Gray meetings. The issue becomes the cost of tearing down the building. We had applied for a grant earlier, I guess it was the end of last year, and we were not successful. That would have covered the demolition. So the total cost of demolition would be borne on the town. And by the time you would sell that property, and pay for the demolition, you might not be any further ahead.
Got it. Okay.
And Volunteers of America is paying for the demolition, correct?
That's what it says in the warrant.
Okay,
Correct.
all right. Any other questions for warrant 47 or Article 47? Seeing none. Article 48, authorizing the select board to purchase the property located at 877 Main Street. This is also known as the Worcester parking lot from the estate of Elizabeth Worcester upon such price terms no more than $75,000 using funds from the tax increment financing program. So Jan, I think you asked me about this earlier, if that was still possible.
Right. So the question is, has that property not been sold?
It is our understanding that if we were to pursue an offer, that it would be considered.
Okay.
And I think because we had.
I do not believe that I don't know if it still says pending or not, but we may have the opportunity, and out of an abundance of caution, we put it on the warrant in the event that does become a reality.
Well, I think that's a wonderful use of the TIF money. So it's a perfect application.
That's all right.
That's exactly the kind of thing we had in mind.
And it's something the town has been looking at
Oh.
since 2011?
Yeah, I think that was when the tax increment.
That was the master
downtown plan was made.
Downtown master plan, and then you had the university come in and do the study.
Yep.
A couple of 3 years ago, so.
Yeah, it would be wonderful if the town gets that.
Yep.
It'd be wonderful.
Article 40, no questions. Article 49, authorizing the sale of Friendship Street School for the highest bona fide offer on the open real estate market and on such other terms and conditions that the select board deems to be in the best interest of the town. In the addition, in the event that there is not a bona fide offer accepted for the Friendship Street School on the open market, shall the town then authorize the select board to enter into negotiations with the developer Ronald Phillips? He only responded to a request for proposal for development of Friendship Street School to develop 5 residential market rate units. Geez, that was a long one. And I just did the short summary of it. It speaks for itself. It's putting it on the open market, getting a realtor to find someone interested in it and selling it for that price. And if people don't want that, then the question is, do they support having it go to Ronald Phillips, who did make the one?
And Ron could buy it outright too. If he wanted.
Ron could buy it outright. And also, what it does is, and so people are aware, this allows us to negotiate with the developer. Then in November, the actual authorization to sell it would appear on that ballot.
And this is for both scenarios, or is this just talking about the latter?
Only scenario where the December, so we've listed it now. It should be going on the market this week. And then if the voters approve the first part of the question, then we just sell it. We don't have to go back for approval. However, if it doesn't get sold, then we would because, you could get a bona fide offer for $50,000. It's a bona fide offer. It maybe that's not something the select board will want to sell it for. So it has to be an accepted offer. If we don't accept an offer, then it could go back to negotiating with the developer. And then the actual sale would have to be approved by the voters in December and November.
And we've had a realtor appraise the building?
Jared and Cohen.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Can you tell us what the value is?
That would be that would be a disadvantage to the town as far as entertaining offers.
I think that's it for the warrant articles. Is there, well, at least the prime ones to talk about. Was there any other questions from members, either for what was discussed or another warrant article that wasn't on the list? Just glad when there are none.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So
Good
that-
work on that, you guys. That was amazing.
If you
That's odd.
actually do go online, it's we have links for all the warrant for all the ordinances in their full entirety, and then we do have a little like question and answers. We put the most commonly asked questions we've had on there, and I think that'll be really helpful for everybody.
So Sylvania, I'm going to be quick because we're now 8:10. So Sylvania Committee met yesterday. There was discussion on the Haas's house because we have now had two separate people looking at it to see if it's still a good structural building.
Mm.
And I've talked with the DEP a bit more about that. We would have to essentially hire an environmental consultant to potentially amend the covenant so that it could be used for residential use. And this is assuming, one, we separate the Haas's house from the rest of the parcel so that it doesn't interfere with any of the plume. Two is that it is on both utilities, sewer and water. And then
Right.
three, the environmental consultant confirms that it is a safe environment for one to live in. So we do have to go through that. But the people who have examined the building so far, and I think Julie just left, people who have examined the building say it is a very good structural building. A lot of money is going to have to be spent on it. So it might not be a project the town wants to undertake unless we have a very, very good need for that building. Because I don't know how much money it's going to spend or it's going to be required, but it could be something where we just amend the covenant to say can be used for residential, put it on the market, and then it's a fix-up project for someone. Then there was what Bob mentioned on the substation. Bob, do you want to talk about that one a bit?
Sure. We're reaching the capacity of the substation. And it's come up because there are some solar projects in town that could go over the carrying capacity of that substation. But that's not the reason. I mean, that's not the reason it's an issue. The reason it's an issue is because the town there are projects in town that are coming down the pike that are not solar projects that could require increases in capacity to the substation. And I think you have Kathy Conway's email address now, right?
I sent an email before the meeting.
So the suggestion was to get hold of the MMA to see what other towns, and we know there are other towns in Maine that are facing the same capacity problems with CMP that Waldenboro is facing, to see what we can do to get them to upgrade that substation because of natural growth, not necessarily because we have solar projects in town.
I did send that off. I'm hoping I'll hear something from her this week.
So I'm confused a little bit. So you're saying we're exceeding the capacity?
No, we're not exceeding it. We're very close to it.
So what has that got to do with adding solar?
So right now, the substation only has a certain amount it can take in for solar because CMP assumes because CMP has to take into account for when solar is being collected and the house isn't using that same amount of energy. So
Right.
CMP is taking into account what happens if all that power at the same time has to rush to that substation. And it's a 7.42
Whatever
Some-
megawatts. Yeah.
that's its capacity. So CMP also has to take into account their own little buffer, probably 10% or something, assuming we don't want to be fully charged because we don't want a project we didn't even know about just slip through and then all of a sudden place blows up. So CMP says, I think CMP has sort of capped the projects in Waldenboro, except for maybe the small residential items. And really the larger projects like what's suggested at Sylvania, or even what we did over at the landfill, that can't really happen anymore.
Or at George's Business Park.
Or George's Business Park.
Yeah.
Can't do those anymore until that substation can handle more intake from solar or renewable energy in general. So what Bob was suggesting was going to CMP and saying, what's it going to take to upgrade that substation? Because it's not about putting in energy, it's now about putting out energy.
I don't believe it for a second. I know some folks that design substations. So let me ask.
Well, I think
Because a solar plant, a solar array is a generating station in a way. And it's generating energy and putting it into the grid.
Mike Thayer is also on the Sylvania committee, and he had the very same things, right?
He did.
It's not,
But the fact is that it still has to go through the substation. You cannot circumvent it.
No,
Everything goes through it and everything comes out of it, no matter who's producing it.
and
That's
Well-
the problem.
the other part is I
that's
had the same conversation.
that's probably not necessarily true.
Well, Jan, here's the other part of it. And this is where I got annoyed.
That's why they call it a grid
Yeah.
and not a line.
Exactly.
Well, here's the thing, and I talked with CMP about this. That's the answer they gave me. I talked with Revision, who made the proposal to do solar at Sylvania. They said the same thing. And the committee said, let's get Sundog Solar, because they did it with the town. They probably might say something different. Danny Piper from Sundog was at that Sylvania meeting. What did he say, Bob?
It's exactly the same thing. And so the information we're getting across the board, whether it's for CMP or the solar guys, is consistent, but that begs the issue. The town needs more capacity, not for solar, but because we have a lot of other projects coming on stream in the future that we need to be able to accommodate.
I'm sorry, Sonia.
I'm not an electrician, but there's this website guy on YouTube called Practical Engineering.
I know
And
that guy.
he had that, how does the substation work? Even went through the Texas power blackout, was a eye opener for me how it happens.
Yeah.
If one goes, the other one backs up, it's the flow of the current and that's the managing of the system. Yeah,
I love that episode.
yeah, that was great. Yeah, he had something, I was watching one about groundwater just today, so that was like, yeah, he was explaining how wells are built. Like to prevent surface contamination getting down into the well water, they
Right.
seal them around the edges and they, but I don't know if they do that here. But
Anyways.
So will you ask as well?
Yeah.
Good. But in the meantime,
I reached out to Kathy.
Yep.
I'm gonna try and see someone else from CMP to see what can be done, and
What voltage do we connect at? If we were going to build an array at Sylvania,
how much voltage would be.
what
built.
voltage would we connect at? So the arrays can have a transformer that steps it up. We're stepping up to like 5 kV or, or is it just 480?
I don't know
I
the
don't
answer to that. I haven't been involved in the engineering of those arrays. Revision would know what their step-up
I would-
requirement was.
I was gonna say, the only thing I can think of is that revision plan that you sent me, and I don't think it said that. I don't think it did. I'm not sure. That's the, oh, and we're also going to try and see if we can get Midcoast Conservancy involved with working on some trails down to the shoreline for Sylvania. Those areas really aren't planned for any development of any kind, so why not make some nice passive trails? And that's it for Sylvania. Well, that's just getting planned, and then the select board will authorize that maybe next month. That's it for Sylvania, unless there's any questions on that.
just real quick, have we made any progress on, I know at one time we thought about, could it be a,
A go-kart track, yes, and I'm glad you got that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
you're on board.
I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
Like an industrial complex, or is it going to be are we going down that road at all or looking at those options?
So we are going to have to put out a survey to the residents. The committee seemed very interested in the idea of solar. Part of what we did tell Sylvania or Leadvance, what we do is put out a survey so that people are not only aware of this, but also so that they can give their input on this. Some people have wanted solar, some people have wanted recreation. Some people probably do want to see it as commercial. And this is something we want to get input from.
Okay.
So it's an option, but we want to hear from residents first. And we're hoping to have that survey ready for distribution by the election so that when people are done voting and they're heading out the exit, we hand them that survey and say, fill this out, please, for the love of all things. I don't want to have this conversation when we're almost done.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. And so is that everything for town updates? That's a lot.
We're not going to get the alewife fish counter for this season. I did buy it, but it's going to take 3 or 4 months to get here. And by that time, alewife season will be done. So we'll have it by next year, and we use grant money for that. But that's just an update on that I don't know we'll care about on this meeting. That's it for that.
So it takes us to old business.
Yeah, George left for American.
George left, so we'll defer that to next month.
Yeah.
We've got the TIF district. Do we want to look at modifying that, or is there a need to?
I'm thinking because of Muscogee Bay, I want to add it into the TIF district because I think that one building they have there alone added $200,000 to that lot. And it kicks me that I didn't include that, and because we didn't include it with the revaluation happening. So I do want to include them. There might be another one involved, but
Can we add that without taking something away, or?
there's plenty of room.
Okay.
Is that going to require voter approval, Max?
Just have to get,
So we're looking at November to do this?
it will have to be done in November. But
Okay.
because the building isn't done now, it's not part of Daryl's assessment. It's just the revaluation that we don't get to capture, which is the other part of the update I wanted to give. Daryl's doing his revaluation. I'm hoping to see some solid numbers this month. And Daryl knows this, and he's gonna tell me when it's all set. We could also talk about, I was also gonna start talking about housing TIF and everything, but it's getting late at that point. And that's something that could probably be discussed in the future.
All right. I know you have something here called meeting times to see if we,
Do we really want to keep meeting at 7 p.m.?
I mean, the reason we moved to 7 was so that folks like John could join us who have, who work.
Right.
Max works too.
Max works too.
I work, so it's,
Sonia works too.
yeah.
All right. I didn't know because we briefly talked about this last meeting. It was like, so what do we think of the meeting time? And then we just immediately started talking about something else. Ignore that. Immediately started talking about something else. We never really came to a solid ending on that.
So if you could have your druthers, Max,
Yeah.
what would be a better time for you?
I mean, I'm always used to just 6 p.m. really for a lot of these meetings to start. But I also know that that people on here are working, and I'm fine being here until 8. Well, I'm fine starting it at 7. That's what I should say. I'm fine starting it at 7
If we don't go to 9.
if we don't go to 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about 6:30? I mean, the office closes at 7 on Tuesdays, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, he's here until 7 anyway. But what does that do to your schedule? If we make it,
6:30 would be okay.
would be okay?
And we can ask all the members, George and John, when they, we'll ask them through an email. And Jen, I see your hand up.
I'm fine, Max, if you need to change it. I'm very grateful that I can zoom in, from work. I mean, I finish work, have something to eat, and I'm zooming right in. So I can do whatever whatever works for you.
It looks like in the chat, Ruben is saying that he's good for 4 PM, right, Ruben?
Or
I
later.
can do 4 PM or later.
Or later?
Okay.
Well, I'll send out a question. I'll send that question out along with the survey and see what people say.
I think it's fair to say we've never gone an hour. We've never gone an hour, hour and a half
That's not
minimum,
true.
That's
minimum. So, you know,
I'm looking at that clock.
We've never gone less than an hour, I think. Is that fair to say?
yeah, we absolutely
It's
never,
always
gone-
been more than an hour.
always more than an
Yeah,
hour.
Well,
Yeah.
in that case, how about if it looks like we're gonna have a packed agenda, perhaps we can consider maybe meeting minimum 15 minutes early.
Well, I'm okay with 6:30. If we, let's reach out to John and George. I think 6:30 works.
Yeah, it works for me. Yeah.
Bob, is that okay with you?
yeah, no,
All right,
Very
so,
flexible.
so we just, and Jen and Ruben are both on board. So it's just John and George.
I'll ask them.
I know that'll help a little bit.
And first Tuesday, still good for everyone?
Yeah, it kind of misses other conflicts.
yeah.
All right, so that takes us to new business. Does anybody have new business? I don't see any hands. All right, good. Comments from the committee? I guess this is a new open chat.
I always like to have comments from the board committee at the end, just so that if there's a topic that we didn't discuss, it's like, I saw this in the newspaper. We should discuss this at the next meeting. And that this is the time to really talk about it. I don't know. Is there something interesting?
So, all right, I think that takes us to the end of the meeting, and 8:23, not bad. We'll call the meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.